the Monday before the event, we were still working through the arrival. And so we have concerns with rooftops. We got a location that we're not keen.
I want to begin with a question that has haunted thousands of people ever since that September morning. How many warnings need to be raised before someone finally listens? Because in the hours before Charlie Kirk walked onto that stage at Utah Valley University, a message had already been sent, a message that now feels impossibly heavy. It came from a man who wasn't just guessing, complaining, or overreacting. It came from Brian Harpole, the head of Charlie's security team, a former Navy SEAL, a former police officer, and someone who understood the weight of danger long before most people even sensed it. And yet, despite his experience, despite his certainty that something was wrong, and despite reaching out directly to the authorities responsible for safety, the response he got back was only 4 simple words: "I got you covered." Words that today feel like a promise that was never fulfilled. As Brian sat down for a nearly 3-hour interview, he described the atmosphere in the days leading up to the event. It wasn't fear, it was responsibility. A trained instinct telling him that certain rooftops were accessible to students, and that this kind of oversight could create an opening no security team should ever ignore. So he contacted the university's police chief, Jeff Long, and asked for something very basic, something that in any high-profile event is standard procedure. Lock the rooftop access, or at least let his team secure it. Instead, he was told everything was under control. But on the day of the event, when people were taking their seats and the crowd was full of optimism, no one had been posted at those doors, and Brian's team had not been granted access to check them themselves. And then, only minutes after Charlie began speaking, everything changed. What followed was chaos, the kind that shatters a room and sends an entire community into disbelief. Charlie collapsed, security scrambled, attendees froze in shock, and the world began asking the same question. How could this have happened? And more importantly, how could it have been prevented? In the aftermath, Brian described how his team did everything humanly possible to respond. He described urgency, training kicking in, and a desperate attempt to stabilize a situation that had already spiraled beyond anyone's control. But the detail that weighs heaviest on him and on everyone who has studied this case is the knowledge that their job became impossible the moment that rooftop was left unsecured. Authorities would later charge a 22-year-old, Tyler Robinson, with aggravated murder. The university would announce an independent review. And yet, even 10 weeks later, so many essential questions remain suspended in the air. Questions about communication, questions about accountability, questions about a system that was expected to protect but ultimately fell short. Because this wasn't just a tragic event. It was a moment that exposed how one overlooked detail can alter everything, how one ignored warning can change the course of countless lives, how institutions we trust can, through oversight or complacency, fail at the very role they're supposed to fulfill. We often analyze tragedies by looking at what happened in the moment, but sometimes the truth lies in what was supposed to happen before the moment ever arrived. And in this case, the truth is difficult to sit with. A trained security expert raised an alarm. He asked for one simple precaution. He was told the situation was handled. And then it wasn't. As investigators continue their work, and as new details emerge about the events surrounding that day, the public is left with a difficult, uncomfortable reality. This was a tragedy that raises questions far beyond a single act of violence. It forces us to confront the decisions made ahead of time and the decisions that weren't. For everyone watching, stay with this story. Stay with the uncomfortable questions. And if you're following this case or cases like it, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the updates that are still unfolding. Because the truth here isn't complete. Not yet. And the weight of what happened deserves more than silence.